my friends, welcome back to part two. So part two begins with me being an inpatient in my local general hospital when they actually had a psychiatric ward. So I was in there for 7 days. It was quite an eye-opening experience seeing other people in there that had an array of different mental health problems varying across all ages. I was 17 at the time and I was the youngest person in there. The oldest person in there was probably about 80. Yeah, it was weird, it was unusual. You know, I felt safe in there, don't get me wrong, but I felt claustrophobic and I felt very out of place. So while I was in there, I got to get involved in different therapies, speak with psychiatrists and psychologists, and yeah, they came to the conclusion that place wasn't for me. So after 7 days, I got let out back into the real world. I had a weekend job at the time with a restaurant. I decided as I quit sixth form to take up more hours there. So I was keeping myself busy, earning some money, which was good. Seeing my friends, and yeah, I wasn't thinking about suicide so much at this point. I was just trying to get by, perhaps try and start figuring out what my life was all about. I got into a relationship with a girl, and yeah, things are going really well. A couple of months later, I ended up feeling really suicidal, took a small overdose, cut myself up relatively badly, I guess, and I ended up being an inpatient again. This time it was for 10 days, exactly the same hospital but a different ward. This time I didn't feel so awkward because I kind of knew the routine, knew what I expected, but this time they gave me some new medication, which I forgot to mention that I was actually on antidepressants by this time. When I got into being an inpatient the second time, they put me on a new type of antidepressant because they didn't feel it was working. I didn't feel it was working either. So I went on to venlafaxine, and then I was put on an antipsychotic because I was starting to hear things, and I kept on getting this real visual image of like I can't remember what it's called. It's like one of those flatline monitors. It was kind of like that, and I used to keep visualizing it in my head, and it would keep playing, and I would hear it talk, and then this line would keep on being like really fuzzy in that. And they decided to put me on antipsychotics, got put on quetiapine, and that really mellowed me out. I was able to sleep a lot better after that, which was really nice, but it did kind of cut out a few hours out of my day because I'd be taking it in the morning and at night as well. So I was in the psychiatric ward for 10 days. At one point I managed to cut myself while I was in there, which wasn't a very clever idea at all. They kept a closer eye on me. But after 10 days, I was let out back into the real world, and to be honest, it was more of a relief this time, whereas last time that I came out, I felt kind of scared going back into the big wide world. But yeah, it was a relief. I was so happy because I was still with my partner at this time, and yeah, I could try and get back to normality. Unfortunately, I still felt quite depressed and anxious, and I was self-harming still. At the end of that year, so this was 2007 now, my partner at the time, she had some real bad physical health problems and ended up in hospital. It was quite serious, and I felt so stressed. I felt really anxious, and I was like, what the fucking hell was going on? And I ended up getting my dad to take me to A&E because I felt really kind of like all over the place, mega anxious, started disassociating and thinking real negative thoughts. Up until this point, for the last few months, I'd kind of pushed suicide out of my mind, and I felt like I could just kind of like bumble on in life. But at this point, my partner at the time going to hospital triggered me real badly. So I went to A&E. I was in the waiting room. I bought razor blades with me, hidden in several places all over me, and got seen by a doctor and told me that I needed to go to this waiting area. It was kind of like a cubicle with like a bed and curtains and that. And the doctor said to me, right, if you just wait here, I'm going to go and fetch some people to come and speak to you, like the mental health team. So while I was waiting, I ended up pulling out a razor blade, cutting myself on both my wrists, more severely than I'd ever done before. to the point where I actually cut through the fat and into a vein, and I bled out quite a lot. I think I lost about a pint of blood at this time, and I felt so dizzy, and I ended up pulling myself out of the cubicle and just shouted out for help. A load of nurses nearby grabbed me, pulled my arm up in the air and started patching me up. Then I got taken to an observation ward. I was all patched up with butterfly stitches or whatever they're called. No, Steri-Strips, sorry. Eventually my dad and my mum came through, and they were just in shock at what I'd done to myself, which was quite surprising by all the things I had done to myself by this point. And then 8 hours later I got seen by the psychiatric team and got let home, and they increased my medication, and that was it basically. So going into 2008, I was still self-harming, still depressed, still suffering with anxiety. The voices had kind of alleviated from having this medication, so I was feeling all right. I was feeling quite, not prosperous, but just kind of more stable than I had been. Come to the end of 2008, my partner and I, that I was seeing at the time, we split up. It's kind of a mutual decision, but I think after not very long time at all, it was really dragging me down. I wish it hadn't happened. I really wanted to get back with her. She wouldn't take me back. And then just before Christmas that year, I ended up taking a very serious overdose of my medication. If you want to watch that video about that story in depth, I've got one on my channel which you can watch. Put myself in hospital, woke up after being out for nearly 2 days. My family was surrounding me. I was in a critical care unit, attached to a couple of drippers and a catheter. It was the most unpleasant feeling ever. Waking up with my family surrounding me, I just felt so ashamed and disgusted with myself. But I was also massively disappointed because I hadn't succeeded. I really wanted to. I was in hospital recovering for about 2 weeks. Came out of hospital, and I was still feeling pretty suicidal, to be honest. I was still self-harming, but I just tried to bumble along, going back into my full-time job, working in a restaurant. Later in 2009, I come to a stage where I was really dithering about whether I should take another overdose or not and try and end my life. And I had this one particular moment. I was living with my nan now by this point, and I was thinking, I really want to end my life. I'm sick of all this up and down, this uncertainty, feeling like a failure. But there was a little voice in me that kept on trying to kind of counter-argue with all these negative thoughts, sort of saying like, no, you can do it. You can really get on with this. You can, you know, you can beat this. So I remember having a shower, and my mind was like negative and positive, trying to fight each other, like, oh, I really want to die. I know you can keep on going. And it was fucking really awkward. I never had this before. Got out of the shower, went into my room, stared at myself in the mirror for quite a while. And then, as much as I was thinking negatively and these voices were coming, it was so stressful because just all these like devil and angel kind of scenario, you know, like, no, I want to die, no, you're going to live, and all this. And eventually, I don't know what happened, because still to this day, I'm really miffed by this kind of unusual force, if you like, kind of overtaking me, and sort of I was staring at myself, and then out of nowhere, my right arm sort of slowly raised, and I pointed to myself, and I just shouted, Scott, no, you are going to be happy, and you're going to make something of your life. It kind of really shook me up, I just froze in silence. I didn't know what to make of it. Anyway, guys, that's part 2. I'm going to come back with part 3 in just a moment.